calling to us from Moscow from 70.
כן, אז אני ארוחת שלנו. אוקיי, נשמע.
Okay.
Hello, are you your presenting on the session? So I need to give you this microphone. Just flip the top bit up near your mouth, and this can just go in your pocket. A bit higher than that, I would do. A little higher, I think. So
Can I put it in a pocket?
yeah, that's exactly it. I would put the microphone a little higher up.
For the board is scratching. The board is scratching. It is why, from my experience, you
No,
know.
I bow to your superior knowledge.
This lady
That should work.
Margaret Regal, who you
Ah, Mario.
I have met you before, but when you first got out, a long time ago. Looking forward to hearing.
Natan, can I give you this microphone?
Yeah, please. You gave one to...
I have.
Yes, it's okay. If you gave to him, I can take it.
KGB used to me used to have. They would dream to put
Will
one.
you put it here? or
In a pocket, wherever you want. Can I say your J-Dog was spectacular?
Yeah, thank
I
you.
was hoping you'd talk about chess. I didn't know.
Yeah, well, that's what I was asked, so I spoke about chess.
The Radio 4 show that you
Huh?
did. You know you did the Radio 4
Yeah, that day I was playing also.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it.
Thank you.
Great, good luck.
Natan and Josef have asked me just to take a minute's silence. This time last year, we were privileged to have Lara's father, Michael Sherbourne, who was incredibly active in supporting the 35s and the Soviet Jewry campaign from this country. And he passed away this year. And we felt it would be a really fitting start to this session just to have a minute's silence in memory of Michael and all the fantastic
Rita
work.
Aker, the passed away. Rita Aker, the head of the 35s as well.
And for Rita and all the other activists, all the other
Rita's husband.
He's alive. Wait.
all the other activists,
I was told I am sorry.
which I think it's
Baruch
a fitting
Hashem.
moment. So we'll just take a minute's silence, and then I'll pass you over to Josef and Natan, who I'm sure will inspire us with their story.
How are you organizing it?
To tell you memories about Michael.
I understand that this time we don't have anybody who is telling us what to do. That we have to start ourselves. Yeah. Okay, then I'll start. Okay. And we'll talk for some time, and then everybody is welcome to ask us questions. Okay. Year ago here, we welcomed Michael Sherbourne, who was, I think, 96 already years old then. And I think it was very difficult for people to understand how this one person could really change the course of history. And here is teacher of Russian language in the school, in English school. One day he decides that he has to call to Jewish activists, refuseniks, the former Soviet Union, to find out what's happening. And then he calls again and again and again. And you have to understand, we are at the time when there is no internet, no cable TV, when no free communication. And our movement depends fully from the fact if the world is mobilized immediately for our support. We could not survive even one day in our struggle with the Soviet Union if immediately it was not the struggle of all the Jewish world. If you go to a demonstration, 10 people, 3 minutes standing in the center of Moscow and arrested, if immediately there are no demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of Jews all over the world and appropriate actions, we will not survive simply. And here is a person who makes thousands and thousands telephone calls during 20 years. And you must be very patient because KGB can interrupt them. They will be jamming. They should not know in advance on what telephone they will be telephone or to the telephone booth of the Central Telegraph in order KGB will not interrupt immediately, but will have like 15, 20 minutes before they will interrupt. So many telephones were disconnected because of Michael Sherbourne's telephone. But he is calling for 20 years, almost every day, and then he's getting this information. He's taping it. And then he's sending it to different Jewish organizations all over the world. It was correctly so. Many Jews in the world are very proud of their activity, and Jewish organizations are proud of their activity. But it was Jewish movement. So there were many Jewish organizations. There are Council for Soviet Jewry, and Conference for Soviet Jewry, and Conference for Soviet Jewry, and Coalition for Soviet Jewry, and 35, because, and many other Jewish organizations who were fighting for Soviet Jews, but they were also fighting with themselves. And there was very often a situation when two Jewish organizations who are fighting for Soviet Jews and who are on the same street in New York and who will never exchange information. We had to take the risk twice. I, as a spokesman and official, had to take risk to put tourists under the risk twice because they'll have to take these documents about prisoners of Zion or some other important document, our letter to Senator Jackson, and to bring them to different organizations. And here is a person who is sending these materials to all the Jewish organizations of the world. Of course, his base was 35 in Britain. But in fact, it was our internet and our TV and our telephone, this one man, who made sure that every day there is connection between us and the Jewish world. And that's one person who simply teacher of Russian language who decided that he has to do it. And no doubt that all the history of our movement, all the struggle of millions of people, all the struggle of the first prisoners of Zion, like Josef, and all the so-called Leningrad trial, and all our efforts could be stopped from the very beginning if we didn't have this powerful line of communication. So if people want, it's sometimes difficult for people to believe that every person can change the world. That's the example. That's what I want to say about Michael. Now, I had many opportunities to speak about our activity, our struggle, but I'm glad that this time I have this opportunity to speak together with yourself, because though it can seem for somebody that 5, 6 years, it's not a big period of time if you look from 40 years distance. But in those years, we are like two different generations. He's like the generation of fathers, and or his grandfathers, and I am parents, and Yulia Edelstein is children, because everybody who came 5 years later, it was already the whole different area. And I can say that for me and for my generation of parents, if there was no grandfathers like Josef Mendelevich and his friends from Leningrad who decided to do such a doubtful thing, to hijack the airplane, but no, well, he can tell about it better, but I want to say, for us, I found out about it when Soviet newspapers wrote that the trial is prepared. And when we heard on Voice of America and Voice of Liberty and the Voice of Israel, the information about preparation of the trial and the speeches during the trial, and Josef and Dimshitz, Kuznetsov and Silva Zalmanson, and we understood that there are people who are ready to sacrifice their lives in order to go to Israel. And at the same time, they started press conferences, official press conferences of Jews who were organized by Soviet authorities who were saying, we love Soviet Union, nobody in Soviet Union wants to go to Israel, it's all Western propaganda. Suddenly, it reached the home of every Soviet Jew in the Soviet Union, that there is problem, but there is also opportunity. That the Jewish world is with us, and Jewish world was demonstrating on behalf of imprisoned activists, and that's the time to speak out. And so I am sure that not only me, many people who in the middle of 70s were very active in struggling for Soviet Jewry were inspired, first of all, by the example of those of the previous generation, 5 years before, who started it. So that's another opportunity for me to say thank you to Josef. And before I'll ask you to speak, no, you also speak.
You can continue, no problem.
Yeah. I have to say that we with Josef have a long
history.
Like life, huh? Romance, but usually it was popular in Russian literature, romance in letters, when people express their feelings in letters, and they call romance. We had romance in Morse signals, because we couldn't see one another, but we could only speak through Morse or through toilet, and always under the threat of being interrupted by the guards and sent to the punishing cell. And it was 5 minutes here, 3 minutes here, but it was long romance. And but for 1 second we saw one another. Once by mistake, usually when you are taken to that yard, there was like, if you are not in punishing cell, you're supposed to have 1 hour, half an hour walk in the special yard. And usually they take one, and only when he's already in the yard, then they go to take the other one.
That we shouldn't meet.
That we should never see one another. And suddenly there was some mistake, some disinformation. Suddenly I see somebody goes towards me, and I think it's Josef, but well, I saw his pictures before I was arrested, like 5 years ago, but these pictures were before he was arrested, what was already 8 years ago. So, and though we had such a long romance, we were talking in Morse, but we never saw one another. And he says to me, Natan, and I say, Josef, and before these guards caught what's happening, we jumped on one another like two lovers. We embraced one another. It continued for half a second. We were dragged to different cells. So that's is our love story with Josef. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. The reason we met by chance was, if I'm not mistaken, that the temperature outside was like minus 40 under zero, and a lot of prisoners refused to walk out. And I took care of my house, for I believe that after being released I have to serve in the IDF, so I would walk out in every weather, and it's why they changed, you know, all the procedures, and it's how we met. Yeah. Anyway, I will, with your permission, continue from the point you started, information. Indeed, I will just explain, you know, how you can speak through the toilet. You know, you have to take out the water from the basin, and then you can speak. You know, the pipe is connecting.
You have to put your head deep inside. Then you can speak. Yeah.
It is how I studied to clean up for Shabbos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and I remember well that, you know, to begin with Michael, Zichrono Livracha, in fact, I was arrested, I believe, before he started his activity, so maybe it was in the very first steps of his activity. It is how I have not memories of how it was about, but I can understand exactly. Our problem was information, and here was mentioned the issue of press conference of so-called loyal Soviet Jews, we had our press conference, and just there in a court, that people like Dimshitz and Kuznetsov were enough courageous to speak out. And then there was a problem to pass the information, whatever we did, whatever we behaved during the trial, to the West. It was quite a problem. We didn't have that time, I believe, in the end of the 70s, somebody like courageous, like Michael, that would call constantly. So my sister, Eva, went from Moscow, from Leningrad to Moscow. She managed to escape KGB, and then she met Professor Sakharov. I believe it was maybe his first experience of speaking out from human rights, and this was Jewish human rights. So he took my sister to a foreign journalist, and she had a kind of press conference. It was very dangerous, very, very dangerous. And what I would like specifically underline, also I have no my individual experience of connecting with Michael. I believe he was a very stubborn person. You have to be stubborn, right? Yeah. For, you know, as Natan mentioned, to call again and again, and it is disconnected, and you have to call again. I believe that from other side of the telephone line, he had the same kind of stubborn people, you know. For it was, I would say for some people that I met, I would take you to hijack a plane. I would take Michael to have. We need people like him, you know. Never give up, never get disappointed. It is a very specific trait that we need in people. I remember Natan, when released, and he met all the activists, he told, now we understand that the housewife can make even sometimes more than a prime minister. In this case, it was a house lord, Michael, but it is exactly it. And it's why we are sitting here, I believe, to activize you, to give you the feeling that, as a certain president would say, yes, you can do it again. Also, there is no anymore, Baruch Hashem, the issue of Soviet Jewry. But still, your activism is very needed, and we enjoy your activism here in Limmud, specifically people, volunteers, people that establish it. It is very important. It's, you know, some outstanding, clever idea. I don't know how you come up in the end of the 70s, but it develops, and it is very important. I met some activists, some volunteers here, and I hailed them for doing that. It is exactly what we expect from you. Some people say, we envy your generation. You had that time the Soviet Jewry, now what we can do. There is a lot of issues and topics important for world Jewry. And you can, we try as well, not to step back. But anyway, I call upon you not only memorize Michael Sherbourne. The best memory is to do whatever he did, to be stubborn, to not in the head, never be stubborn, but with your family, but in activism, in a struggle for Israel, say, for Jewish education. Never give up. Be insistent, polite, but insistent, and we will achieve it. Okay, now I propose, well, we can speak forever if we start. Specifically memories.
Yeah, memories. But what I propose that anybody who wants to ask some questions about the past, about our struggle, about our experiences, about your experiences, about world Jewry experiences, I will be very glad to answer. Yeah, please.
So can you wait for the mic?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Ruth Suttendorp, and I'm from Bournemouth and now from London. And I want to say firstly that the last time I heard you speak, Natan, was when you filled the Albert Hall very shortly after your walk over that bridge. And it's a memory we won't forget. I was one of the first people, inspired by Michael and supported by Michael, that went to Leningrad and met with the refuseniks then. I'll say one comment on what you said about the groups in the West not talking to each other and causing extra difficulties for you. One of the problems we experienced was the groups of refuseniks that wouldn't talk to each other.
They were also Jewish. What do you
They were also Jewish.
They learned from your experience.
So we have a shared experience there. We would come back very frustrated, realizing that we'd told something to somebody and it never got through to the other people. But I think one thing you may not be aware of, both of you, is the incredible impact that working for the Soviet Jewry had on, I can't speak for America, but I'm sure it's the same, on UK communities. Your struggle brought together people who would never have worked together before, Jews who would never have spoken to each other before. And committed to you, we found such strength and inspiration. It was just incredible. I think the only thing that comes anywhere near it today is coming to Limmud. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here and for giving us that opportunity to be part of history.
Okay, I'll make very short comment about it, and then...
One second.
You know, I live now in the house where, in Penthouse, lived the family of new immigrants from America. I say lived because some weeks ago they were replaced by new immigrants from France. That's what's happening in these days in Israel. Aliyah from France is pushing aside everybody. So, but this very nice family from New York, once the wife was passing in my yard, looked there when I was playing with my daughters, it was many years ago, and she said, you know, Natan, it was such a great time when you were in prison. we went on these demonstrations. We were dating one another. We had these twin bar mitzvahs. It was such a good world. Where is all this?
It is that you are released.
Yeah. I have to say that neither Josef nor I have any plans to go to prison. So we'll have to find different ideas to unite. Yes, please. Please. Lord Janner's daughter.
Yes.
Lord Janner was the first politician who was calling to us, to Moscow, from Europe. I can't say every day, but even if it was once in 3-4 weeks.
Friday nights.
Friday night.
Yeah, well, then we are a bit of chilul, goes a long way.
Then we didn't know that that's not permitted. Now we would be more tough.
Okay, this is a very loud microphone. It's you.
Okay.
Made a huge difference to my Jewish life, to my life. But I know that because I grew up with you, your stories, sleeping to Sleka. Every Friday we spoke, and my mum was involved in 35s with Michael, Zichrono Livracha. But there are people in this room who don't know. And even if there are people who know, I would love you to take a bit of time and both of you tell us a bit of your stories, because there are people here who don't know. So, and even the people who know, give us the history now. Tell us a bit about your stories, please.
Okay.
Okay, but we have some people that ask for,
okay, but
comment.
Okay.
Some more, two
more questions, and then we'll try to integrate our stories into our answers, okay?
I wouldn't be here but for you. I'm here remembering all those cold days, all those cold nights. I used to run an organization called Christian Support for the Persecuted, and we worked very closely with the 35s. I worked very closely with Laura's father, and I think it was well, we were always asked to do the Friday night demonstrations because the Jewish people couldn't do it. And gradually, I got drawn in because I just saw what was going on in the Jewish community. And then I started to want to keep Friday night as well. I started to light candles on Friday nights. And this is your fault.
Well, but you had bad influence on Jews. They started violating Shabbat, huh?
Well, I keep Shabbat now. But honestly, I wouldn't be here but for you. And I just want to say thank you so much. Because it wasn't just the Jewish people. Yeah. There were a whole bunch of Christians, and we used to go with our guitars and our banners and everything. And you were an inspiration. And you weren't just an inspiration because of the Jewish people, but also there were Christians in a similar situation who were also being persecuted. And you stirred us up to work for the Christians as well. And I'm sure that was beneficial. I'm sure that was the right thing to do. And I just want to say thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would add that we had some experience in East Iceland, in Reykjavik, in 1987. There was a summit, and it turned out that it is on Yom Kippur, if you know what's Yom Kippur. So we went there, but we couldn't demonstrate. But there was a local group of Christians that come to demonstrate, so we simply stand next to them, and they had all the placards. Let my people go, whatever. So.
Good. And then you'll stand for them on Christmas, okay?
I would like to, for Natan, I don't have to introduce. Our hero, and he was a minister in the government, the head of Kazalya. Josef Mendelevich, which is a well-known leader of Zion, but is not as known as Natan. And we wanted to bring it for Limmud in Moscow. I said to myself, I don't know whether the young generation know who Josef Mendelevich.
Microphone.
Where's the young man? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I didn't know whether they know Josef Mendelevich. We in Israel knows. Even in the struggle for Soviet Jewry, when Natan was in prison, I was fighting Josef Mendelevich. He was head of one organization, and I was the head of the National Conference for Soviet Jewry in Israel. And we have more demonstration one against the other than fighting for the president of Zion. But we did it for the good. And so we decided to bring him to Moscow. We convinced the volunteers to bring him along, and I didn't know. I was really worried. I went to the room, and we didn't, it's Limmud. You never know how many people come. First of all, the room was packed. I was so happy. And you know what? You were the best speaker from the evaluation we made in the Limmud. Look, it's 1,200 people in Moscow. It's the second largest Limmud in the world. And they all pay between $300 to $600 participation. Moscow. And Josef was the star. We brought a group from Petersburg to Limmud in Moscow, and they said, Chaim, we want to bring Mendelevich to Petersburg. So he went to Petersburg. Unfortunately, I couldn't come because I became a grandfather at this very day. So, but I knew after I saw whatever I saw in Moscow, and when it finishes, the way the press in Russia, as well in Israel, in the world, is like Josef Mendelevich was released from prison again. Yeah. It was a big success. And you both of you deserve it. You are our heroes, and I'm an Israeli born. See you as being Israel.
See, we made a mistake. We asked for questions, and people are giving us compliments.
So we stopped.
No, speak about what you were asked to speak about. No, wait. Okay, Josef will tell his story. No, you are the grandfather. You'll start.
As we say, Boba Mises.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I spoke already yesterday. So I'll think for something special, maybe to tell another story that I didn't tell before. They're a very simple story. When under interrogation, my KGB officer that would question me told me, what of a sudden you decided to run away to Israel? You're a Russian boy, you speak beautiful Russian language, and you look like a Russian boy. I feel very close to you. You are like my young Russian brother, And believe me, he told me I was on a secret mission to Israel. It's nothing to be valuable to sacrifice your life for it. It's underdeveloped country, very hot there, you know, and whatever. So when I was back in my cell, I was very angry with me. And I looked at myself, also I didn't have a mirror. I looked at myself and I thought, maybe he has right. Really, I don't look like a Jew. If I had a beard and payas, you know, but I have nothing, like him speaking his language. So I decided I have to build a wall between me and him to make him to understand that I'm altogether different, also I look like him. And I understood that it is the mitzvahs that make us specifically different. What kind of mitzvahs can I experience there in a cell? And I decided I have to cover my head. So I had a handkerchief. You know, all Russian Jews have a handkerchief to clean. So I made knots on the handkerchief and put on my head. Instead, I didn't have a yarmulke. So I put it on my head. And when next time I was escorted to my Russian brother, he got angry. He told me, "You behave," he told me. You got university education. You are an educated man. Why you behave this strange way? I thought, okay, I'm an educated man, but I have a Jewish education. You guys, when you enter an office, you took off your hat, and he did the opposite. So it is how it started. You know, I understood that what can keep me strong and make me remember, not specifically him, that also maybe Israel is underdeveloped country and it's very hot, but still I am a Jew and it's my motherland, and I am ready to do whatever needed to remain Jew. Thank you.
Okay, because you asked to say briefly our stories, I'll try to say briefly the story of assimilated Soviet Jewry that we are speaking each time about it, but it's still very important to understand that what, first of all, I think I represent majority of Soviet Jews at the time, not Josef, because I was absolutely assimilated. In the city of Donetsk, which then was not known, but they know everybody because that's the center of the battles between Russia and Ukraine. But where I was born and grew, there were tens of thousands of Jews who had zero knowledge about anything Jewish, except from the fact that it is written in the ID of your parents, Jew, and so there is a lot of discrimination. So Jew was a very negative word because there was no positive meaning in it for us. And well, Josef was from the family with much more tradition.
My father and the mother were communists. Don't forget.
Well, okay, but nevertheless, you knew something, yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was saying, what really brought us back, it's Israel. It's 1967 when suddenly every goy near us, those who hate you and those who love you, they all connect you to Israel. When the jokes about, anti-Semitic jokes about Jews changed. Instead of Jews cowards, Jews greedy, Jews who want our money, these Jews hooligans, Jews who are beating us, Jews. Suddenly you understand that this image of Israeli soldier who is defeating its enemies and a huge accumulation for Soviet Union and big campaign anti-Israel, but suddenly you understand, in the minds of all the people, he is like your brother. He is connected to you, for good and for bad. And then, well, if everybody says that we are connected, you want to find out. And that's what we started studying it from the underground. And then, of course, the fact that there were first groups of Jews who dared to try to go to Israel, and Josef was one of them, that had a big encouragement for all of us. Now, I want to describe you typical episode of our struggle, those in the 70s. Demonstration of 10 people. Why only 10 people? Because the more people know in advance about demonstration, the more chances that KGB will know. And if KGB knows, there will be no demonstration. 10 people standing 3 minutes with the slogans, "Let my people go," or "Freedom to the prisoners of Zion." Why 3-4 minutes? Because even if KGB does know in advance how long you can stand in the center of Moscow with such slogans before you'll be arrested. 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then people are arrested, and they get fined, or they get 10 days or 15 days, or in one of these demonstrations, two of my friends got 5 years of exile in Siberia. So one can say, what is the usefulness of this demonstration, to stand 3-5 minutes, 10 people, then years in Siberia? But if these demonstrations are organized correctly, that was one of my functions as a communicator with the foreign press, means that it is very important that at least one representative of foreign press will come. And it's not simple, because the foreign press lived in 3 houses in Moscow, which were like, we call them ghettos, because they're guarded by KGB. There is no way to meet and talk with the foreign journalists, not in the presence of my KGB tails, or those KGB tails who are standing there. So, but we had already developed a whole language with them for years. So you talk to him, and KGB man hears every word, and he didn't understand. Just now you explained to him that in 2 days from now, such a place, there will be demonstration. So if it is organized well, KGB does know in advance. One journalist, usually it was one journalist, from AP or from Washington Post, so whoever you could organize a connection. He'll come and he'll report. And in the evening it will be on the radio. And next year, on the radio, on foreign radios. And next day, hundreds of thousands of Jews had to start working. These organizations have to send letters, to send telegrams, to bring people to their demonstrations, that congressmen and senators and members of the parliament have to be mobilized, and the State Department has to call to invite Soviet ambassador and to demand how to express the indignation and protest. And then, of course, it didn't happen immediately, but took some few months. But the amendments in American Senate and Congress, which connected our fate, in fact, with the most important economical and other political interests of the Soviet Union. That's how all this was developing. And that's why, without Israel, we would never start. Without immediate mobilization of the world Jewry, but really immediate, it had to be, if it was 48 hours later reaction, that already doesn't matter. It had to be immediate, almost synchronized without talking. It could never happen, because we were dealing with a society where KGB killed tens of millions of its own citizens in order to have full control over the brains of these people. And here a bunch of Jews, a few hundred Jews, are challenging this empire. Now, KGB, it's not me who called it housewives. It's KGB who called this movement students and housewives. And I tell this episode, though, I tell many times, but because I was asked now to say something from this day, so I'll tell this episode. I was arrested and accused in high treason after a few years of warning that I'll be arrested because I was like a spokesman and made all these connections, and Andrei Sakharov, between Andrei Sakharov and the dissidents, and Jews all over the world. So I was arrested and accused of high treason. And there was more than 1 year of interrogations, and then almost half a year studying of the case, because I was not in a hurry. They prepared a case of 51 volume, 15,000 pages. It had to be the case against all our movement. So, and I have the right to read all the materials which are used against me. So I was not in a hurry. I spent a few months on studying these materials. And some moment I see that they're using some which was published, which was produced by Granada after my arrest. Before my arrest, people from Granada came, and the underground, we made a film with them. It was the first film which was showed in the West, where direct interviews of dissidents and refuseniks. And I think one of the reasons why KGB was so angry on me is because of this film, which was showed all the world. I find out from the case that after my arrest, there was another film, and they are using quotes that Michael Sherbourne is saying about my activity and some others, and so they're using these quotes. So that if you're using against me, so I try to see it. So the month they'll show me the film. And there was for months there was debate and so on. Then, as I saw all the materials, I was shown this film. And suddenly, it's a year and a half after I was arrested. No, nothing was happening in the world. Of course, they tried to convince me that all the world is against us and so on. And all the Jews are scared to do anything. And here I see this demonstration. Not very big demonstration, but a few hundred people in front of Soviet embassy in London, demonstrating, Jews and Christians, and not only I see there Michael Sherbourne and Lyud Alexeyeva was a human rights activist and others, but my wife is leading this demonstration. And it was so beautiful, and it was so great. So the moment it finished, it was like 25 minutes film, whatever. I demanded they'll show it to me again. They said, why? I said, I'm sorry, I don't have my lawyer. You didn't let me to have my lawyer. I have to defend myself. I don't understand English well. There are many phrases which people are saying. I don't know which of these phrases you will use against me. I have show it to me again. So they showed it to me again. Then I demanded third time. And I don't remember. And then this Colonel Volodin, who was the head of the team of 17 interrogators, he started shouting. He simply lost nerve. They always try to understand why I'm so self-confident. They're explaining that they'll sentence me to death, and I'm boasting all the time how the life is good, and my life there is bad. And so he started shouting at me. He said, what do you think? That these people will help you? That's from where you're getting your hope. Look who they are. They are a bunch of students and housewives. And we are KGB. And I think that's a great definition of our movement. The students and housewives who defeated this KGB which now doesn't exist, and the Soviet Union doesn't exist, and 1 million Jews came to Israel, and another million Jews
and Jewish housewives still exist.
Well, that's the great lesson of our struggle. Yeah.
To me, you're heroes, and in fact, I think all the refuseniks were heroes to do what they've done. I think in a history of 2,000 years of Jewish heroes, which are taught, but for some reason that I don't understand, the story of Soviet Jewry is not taught in schools, and it needs to be. It's a history in itself, and it's a lesson for everything else. And I just wondered what we can do to make sure that the story is taught and continues for as long as the stories from 2,000 years ago are taught.
Well, that's a good I want to say, I ask this question very often, and I always turn the tables, because when in America people are asking me, but why it is forgotten? Why this great history of yours is not part of school studies and so on? I become very upset and angry. I say, forget about me, forget about us. You fought the struggle, this struggle of 20 years, from 35, people from all these Jewish organizations in America.
Even Malcolm Hoenlein himself.
Yeah, Malcolm Hoenlein himself, who still is the Jewish leader, and he was 50 years ago also Jewish leader. He was very active in Soviet Jewry. I say, how it is that you forgot to tell to your children about yourself. They're constantly looking how to make for their children, make them excited from their Jewish identity. And they're telling them the stories of Maccabim and David. And it's a little bit interesting, but it's too far. I say, here, it is their life. For 20 years, they were so active in this movement, and they somehow don't tell to their children. I think it's big loss, not because of us, not because, thanks God, our children know about us. It's a big loss because here I'm speaking as a chairman of Jewish Agency. Our major challenge, and I think you saw it, heard it on Limmud all the time. Just now I was speaking together with Shavit and that. Everybody's speaking about it. How to give to this new generation the feeling of pride of being Jewish. It's a huge challenge. But if it so happened that in your generation of the parents of these children, there was unique historic struggle, which you will not find parallel to it, which can be compared only with the exodus from Egypt, when the most strong empire in the world, and suddenly they had to open its gates, millions of Jews left, and the empire fell apart. Doesn't sound like exodus from Egypt? And what else happened? And you are those people who did it, and you took it away from Jewish history. I believe it's unbelievable loss in our struggle for strengthening Jewish identity, for giving to our children, to our generations, this feeling of pride. And we don't have to be concerned about your children, your grandchildren, and my children, and my grandchildren. We make sure that they know about it. But you have to make sure, you and everybody, have to make sure that your children know about your struggle and how important it is.
It is up to you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but thank you for the question.
Yeah. Good? Okay. Erev Tov, Natan and Josef. My name is Elliot Malamut. I'm a Jewish educator and I live in Jerusalem. I wanted to pick up on a point that you spoke of before, Natan, which is this massive assimilation in the Soviet Union, which I assume was caused by the Soviet attempt to purge religion for decades from the consciousness of all Russians and certainly Jews. I wonder if you can evaluate and assess the long-term impact of this on Russian Jews in terms of their religious identification then and now, both those who remain behind in Russia and also those who made Aliyah, and what you think the overall picture will be of this sort of massive attack on Jewish identity, and whether they've recovered, and whether there'll be sort of a religious consciousness that's re-inspired among Russian Jews.
Want to answer? Yeah. Okay, I'll answer. First of all, there was a policy of erasing identities, not only Jewish and not only religious, any identities, because loyalty had to be only to the Communist Party. So any connections with faith, with the religion, with the family, who was the biggest hero of the Soviet Union? Pavlik Morozov, who betrayed his parents and informed to the authorities about what they are doing with their property, not giving it to the Soviet Union. And he became like the biggest hero, because all the loyalties to anything had to be destroyed. Because Jews were especially strong in their identities, connections, family connections with Jews all over the world, and so on. So there was special strong attack, and identities were erased. I was already second generation of real assimilated Jews. It was erased to the extent that even Holocaust, and I was born, but 3 years after Holocaust, I was born in the center of Holocaust. Donetsk was the second biggest place after Babi Yar, the places where I played, and I didn't know it. 70,000 Jews were killed simply in those playgrounds where I was, and we grew simply knowing nothing about it, because that was the policy of raising identities. But at the same time, there was anti-Semitism. And as I said, then there came Israel to our... so when it came back, and it came back first of all through this feeling of solidarity of persecuted people, it was very strong. And that's why I'm much less concerned about lost identity of Soviet Jews. Even today in America, where we have, of course, very big problem with assimilation, and assimilation of Russian-speaking Jews and Hebrew-speaking Jews is especially serious. But when there is demonstration of solidarity of Israel, this demonstration speaks in Russian at least as much as it speaks in English, meaning that this feeling of connection, solidarity, is very strong even on the second generation. Having said this, I'm not very optimistic about the future of Jewish communities in Russia and Ukraine, though we do a lot to help them. But I think, well, after 75% of Jews left already, so it's a hardcore of those who don't want to move and at the same time rather assimilated. But I have to say I'm much more concerned. That's all my speech is about assimilation which goes in America, especially the United States of America. Whenever I, as a head of Jewish agency, am asked to speak about where are places where Jews have big problems. And every Jew in the free world loves to hear about the big problems which Jews have in Ukraine, which they have in Iran, which we have in Kyrgyzstan, and in Turkey. It's all true, we have their problems. But I think by far our biggest problem is what's happening in the United States of America. Every day, few hundred Jews less. Every day, few hundred Jews less. That's the result of assimilation. And this assimilation, which is not assimilation imposed on you, which is not an assimilation which goes together with the anti-Semitism, but it is volunteer disappearing of people who decided that their identity is not important for them. That's much more difficult and deep process. And I would say that's the problem number one which we Jewish people have.
I will maybe add some.
Yeah, please.
I will add from my personal experience that I'm teaching already for 15 years in Machon Meir, mostly not Jewish people that are in the process of converting, coming in framework of Masa, this
our program.
And you know, I meet people that have had a Jewish grandfather. That's all. And all of a sudden, you discover in this altogether assimilated, I would say Russian, a Jewish soul, Eidish Nishome, something unbelievable. I am a believer, but I start believing that finally everybody will come. You have to see the man that is sitting day and night, that interested and then charmed in Jewish history. And I believe they will go, and I tell to everybody, you're on the mission. I am teaching you that you have to reach out and to meet other friends. For we have to understand, to be Jew is the biggest privilege in life, you know. People simply don't know. And you have to explain everybody. You would like to enjoy your life, be Jewish. That's a big joy. Yes. So I am optimistic. Finally, everybody will come back. Even we had, my time, some 3 million of Jews. A lot of them got intermarried. So we have maybe now 10 millions of assimilated Jews. And finally we shall have like 10 lost tribes, all 10 million Jews and much more around coming back to being Jewish.
Yeah, you know, official statistics is, which I have to use, there are approximately 800,000 eligible under the law of return. It's not Jewish galactically, but eligible under the law of return in the former Soviet Union. Approximately 300,000 galactically Jewish. But my friends from Chabad, and Chabad is very active in Russia, said they believe that at least 2.5 million Jews are in the Soviet Union. So my big hope is that they are closer to God, so they know better. But I have to use dry statistics, and our statistics says it's about 300,000.
But imagine if finally some 10 million Jews will come from Russia, we have we need a bigger territory in Israel to settle all of them.
First of all, you know, solve the problem with chief rabbinate, then we'll talk about the territory. Chief rabbinate will not let us bring them, though. Okay. Yeah. By the way, if somebody thinks that the problems with Giur, conversion in the English Jewish community is better, no, it's also very big.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have many questions,
Yeah.
but one that's come out of what you've just said is, do you think that persecution causes us to value our Judaism more? Is that what we need all the time to keep us Jewish?
To a certain level, when you are not assimilated. The third generation, you can persecute him, he will not, because of persecution, he will not come back. only because of love, not hatred, brings people back to being Jewish. The love for the state of Israel, for the history or whatever. It's my belief. I am sorry to interrupt you, but I believe that not persecution. At a certain, when you are not part of Jewish nation, persecution help you. But the moment you are second, the third generation, you don't feel that much, you are not persecuted, you are Russian.
Well, I think it's, in fact, a very deep philosophical question. It's not only about Jews, it's about human beings. Does suffering make people better? Does it make their lives deeper and then more interesting? I would say, if you have won your suffering, or if you have overcome it, if you met the challenge and was not destroyed morally, then definitely it makes you stronger, it makes your life more meaningful and much more interesting. I have to tell you frankly that when people say, oh, you sacrificed so much, you suffered, was it worth it? And they say, I don't understand what you're talking about. What suffering? Only think what kind of life we had, so-called life of free Soviet people who were in constant line, constant double thing and so on. And what a great life we got, even when we were in punishing ourselves. We were free people. So the moment you can enjoy the life of free person, then all this suffering, it's not real suffering. It's something what makes your life deep. And I believe it's not only about Jews, it's about human beings. So yes, because Jews had enough strength to overcome all these challenges for 1,000 years, no doubt it made our life much more meaningful, much more deep. The thing is, when you have all these challenges without suffering, and that's the problem of modern assimilation.
Let me finish this meeting with a story how I helped to release you from the prison.
Okay. You know, every American Jew says to me how he helped to release. So
no, me too. And it happened that I believe a year before Natan was released, Avital called me up, and she told that she has to go to Europe, specifically to London, Stockholm, Amsterdam, for there will be a conference of foreign ministers in Europe, and she would like them to discuss the issue of releasing Sharansky. So we need to organize a meeting with English foreign minister. We went to see Prime Minister Shamir. He accepted us immediately, and we told we need to see, next day, to see our English foreign minister. And he told, even me, if I would like to see him, I have to prearrange it for next month. Not now. I can do it. No problem. We called up Rita Ecker, and we told we need a meeting with the foreign minister. Call us in half an hour later. I was already in Israel. In half an hour, everything was set. It turned out that an activist of 35s worked in a foreign ministry across the office of the foreign minister itself. So the secretary of foreign minister was her friend. She went up and he arranged it. The prime minister couldn't do it.
Everything in Jewish world is protection. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, of course, first of all, there was a big struggle that it will not be closed trial, and they refused even to speak there if there will be not one representative of our family. So the compromise was that my brother was permitted to be in the trial, but two people from KGB were sitting near him and were not letting him to write down anything to the rest. So all the day he was sitting there, then in the evening he was going out and he was telling the crowd everything what he remembers. Then he was taken to Sakharov's apartment to give all the information there. But then there was one student, I don't remember, I think from England, who came in advance and stayed in the Metropole Hotel. It's like almost KGB hotel for VIPs, which is very controlled and so on. And from that hotel, every day, or to that hotel, every day Michael Sherbourne was calling and was debriefing my brother about everything what happened there. And then he was putting on the paper and sending all over the world. So that was one of the very important channels, and yes, that's how Michael Sherbourne helped to millions of people to find out.
And Leonid had a beautiful memory to memorize everything, almost word by word.
Yeah, that's true. So, but no, that was all that struggle, it was the effort of millions. I think Josef gave a great story about foreign minister. Let me also finish with your prime minister, with Margaret Thatcher. One day, Vitaly in America, and that's during my hunger strike, and she knows she's fighting, and she decided that, her advisor decided that she has urgently to meet Margaret Thatcher. But how? And today she's flying to England. So they say, okay, there's her advisor, we will not use his name, but he's like not the advisor, head of her office, he's Jewish. And somebody immediately figures out how to find his hotel. And Vitaly calls him. And she calls him and says, Mr. So-and-so, my husband is in a terrible situation in Soviet prison. You will know his name, Natan, Sharansky, and so on. I want to have a meeting with Margaret Thatcher tomorrow. And then there was a long pause, and then he starts shouting. I said, did you look at the watch? It's 2 o'clock at night. You're calling at 2 o'clock at night, and you're asking for the meeting with the prime minister. That prime ministers are waiting for a month. You really believe that there is no other thing in this world to Prime Minister Thatcher to do except from this? Then Vitaly, who, as you know, is a very shy girl, and when somebody starts shouting on her, she is lost immediately. But here she answered in a quiet way. She said, Mr. So-and-so, I really believe that the most important thing for the future of the world is that you will organize this meeting with Margaret Thatcher. And maybe God, our God, put you in this place in order you can do it. Next morning, she landed in England. He was waiting for her in the airport. He took her to Margaret Thatcher. They had very important conversation. Margaret Thatcher called Russian ambassador, told him as she knew what to tell and so on. But you see, I have to say that he did everything what she wanted him to do. So I want to say that practically, if each of us is reminded what is our role in history, we can do absolutely amazing things, even to get Margaret Thatcher at 2 o'clock at night.
And it's why we say, yes, we can.
Yes. It's not the only mood.
Natan, Sharansky session
no, where is
tomorrow.
Where is
tomorrow if we move forward, it's at 9:20 over here.
Yeah.
It would not be at 10:40, it's at 9:20.
The question I wanted to ask, but there wasn't time, is